From the New Arts and Media Studios in Milwaukee, I'm Charles Purcell. This is The Log. Let's see. I can't get Dolly out of my head. Have you seen the clips of Dolly Parton getting her vaccine? I just can't get it out of my head. I got a brand new earworm. You know me, I always have an earworm. And currently, that's it. Dolly Parton with her cute little song. Let's see, what was... Vaccine, 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 vaccine. I'm hoping that you just won't hesitate. Something like that. Vaccine, 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 vaccine. 'Cause when you're dead, well, then it's just too late. Oh, we love Dolly. Everybody loves Dolly. Hey, did you see some of the Senate testimony yesterday? It wasn't big news, really. It wasn't any big breaking news. But just to hear the direct testimony, especially from this General Walker, General William Walker, commanding general of the D.C. National Guard. Well, he testified in front of the, which committee? The Rules Committee, Senate Rules Committee. And to have him tell the story firsthand about, first, that the horrible phone call from Sund. What's his first name? I forgot. There's too many. Stephen Sund. Too many people to keep track of here. He, of course, the chief of the Capitol Police. So he's making this frantic phone call, begging for help, and then Walker relays to the committee on how he immediately called to get approval because he needs approval from the Secretary of Defense. And that's when the stonewalling starts, and no, maybe we don't like the optics. And this all been reported on how it took 3.5 hours. Was that the total? Maybe more. Let's see. I'm looking at my notes here. Walker got the go-ahead call finally at 5:08 p.m. And he got the original call from Sund at 1:49 p.m. So do the math. The one thing we did learn, Walker said that if he'd gotten the okay immediately, like he expected to get, he could have had 150 troops at the Capitol in 20 minutes. So, I mean, this is crazy. Also, something that's been reported, or maybe it hasn't, I'm not sure. This was new to me, that Walker of the D.C. National Guard and Sund of the Capitol Police spoke days before the attack, and Sund told Walker that he was not allowed to request the National Guard ahead of time, because that was the conversation. Walker said, "Do you want us? Should we talk about this?" "No, I've been told I'm not allowed to request it ahead of time." And Walker's a little surprised by this. He says, "Well, okay, but if and when you need me, I'll be waiting by my phone. Call me if you need me." Which he did, frantically. And then they got the Stonewall. So I had a couple of thoughts through this. One, again, it's really good to hear this from the primary sources. Investigative reporters do a very good job. The Washington, D.C. press is excellent. Politico, Washington Post, etc. They do a great job. So we knew a lot of this, most of it. But to hear the players speak in public testimony under oath, yeah, it's powerful. And also it takes me back to the impeachment, and it resurfaces my anger at the Democrats for just blowing it. I mean, I know they weren't going to get a conviction anyway, probably. It would have been really tough to get those extra Republicans they needed because of the state of the Republican Party, which you and I have talked about ad nauseum. But still, for the sake of history, for the sake of the American people, to get the story out, I really wish they hadn't taken such a narrow approach to impeachment. Because you got to know that Christopher Miller, who was the acting Secretary of Defense, as you recall, was there shoulder to shoulder with the Orange Menace as he's gleefully watching this all unfold on television and loving it for literally hours. And Christopher Miller is in his position for, at this point, less than 2 months, only because he was handpicked by the Orange Menace after firing Mike Espers, and Mike Espers had a little too independent, so he's gone. He's got his handpicked lapdog, Christopher Miller, and they stonewall it. So I really wish the impeachment had focused more on that, made it maybe a separate article regarding his blatant, obvious disregard for human life, abuse of his presidential power. He was basically the leader. He was the general of the attack of January 6th. So hearing this testimony today really brought that all home. I really think the Democrats blew it. And I worry, I do. I kind of worry about how history will be recorded because of both the failure of the Democrats vis-a-vis impeachment and also just the general world we live in now where there's no such thing as truth and everything is both sides. Well, somebody says this and somebody else says that, and who can ever know the truth? And, we've got this world now where I worry that the truth will just die on the vine. Now, as kind of amazing as this hearing was yesterday, I guess I have two things to say. One, I think I have to take back what I've said earlier. I've said all along that Congress at this point should just not be a part of this process. That whatever investigations they do, and we've certainly seen it, the great model, of course, being Watergate back in the day. But then, every few years they pop up and they play a big role. Certainly Iran-Contra. Certainly the first impeachment of the Orange Menace and the second impeachment. So we're all used to seeing these investigative committees, and they definitely serve a purpose. But when it comes to the January 6th attack, my thought has been we really need a 9/11 style commission, and a lot of people agree with that. I'm not going out on a limb asking for that. We need the great work of investigative reporters, as I've mentioned. There are civil suits and criminal suits in state courts and regional courts. That's all good. But I kind of thought that, these Senate and House committees, where half of the members are members of an organization that incited the attack, encouraged the attack, and now trying to cover up and excuse the attack and defend the attack. Yeah, having half Republicans on these committees, I thought, I'm not sure they even have a role to play at this point. I still mostly feel that way. But I have to backtrack from that because, as I've said, it really is powerful to hear them in public testimony, these first-hand sources, primary sources. That still really packs a punch. So, mixed feelings on that. All right, what else is going on? I can't even. This whole Dr. Seuss thing is so fucking ridiculous. If you've only seen headlines, it's really a very, very simple story. It's so simple. The publishers, the people who publish Dr. Seuss books, and there's like 100 books, there's a whole bunch of them. Well, 6 of the books had images that really we don't need to see anymore. Dr. Seuss himself, Theodore Geisel, he fully admitted it himself as he evolved over the years. His family freely admits it. He had some race problems. He had things to learn. And there are many examples of his cartoons, not just the children's books, but he was a cartoonist long before he did the famous children's books we know. He had kind of a long history of troublesome cartoons. And I'm a bit of a cartoon buff, so this was all very familiar to me. I knew this story about Dr. Seuss. Well, after, I think, over a year-long process of sort of talking about it, thinking about it, studying on it, the publishers decided, these 6 books, they have some images of African Americans, of Asian Americans that are pretty offensive, and let's just take them out of circulation. We won't publish these anymore. Fine. Not a problem. It shouldn't have been a story at all, except for maybe just a tiny little blip. These are titles, frankly, that I was really kind of unaware of. They're not the famous books. It's not Horton Hears a Who. It's not Cat in the Hat. It's not the Lorax. It's not Green Eggs and Ham. It's not the big ones. These are 6 lesser-known titles, and they just stopped publishing them. They didn't go out and find every last copy and confiscate them. They're still out there. You can still buy used copies, which, by the way, the prices have skyrocketed, which is another whole other story about how the world is weird. But the weirdest thing about this, and the most disappointing, is what you're seeing in the headlines. Conservatives who've invented this whole cancel culture catastrophe are just screaming from the rooftops. Oh, they're canceling Dr. Seuss. It's all just so ridiculous. Nobody's canceling anybody. It's just a responsible decision from a responsible publishing house. That's all it is. Dr. Seuss, of course, passed away many years ago. His estate is just fine with this. They're absolutely fine with it. They agree with it, with the decision. As I said before, they acknowledge the shortcomings of the man himself. He himself acknowledged those shortcomings while he was alive and talked about it openly. Yeah, I learned, I evolved. It's all so harmless. So the right-wingers, the pretenders, are just going nuts. And what makes me especially sad is when regular folks just see a headline here or there and they believe it's true. So even people on the left or people in the center, otherwise kind of reasonable people, they see a headline and they believe, oh, Dr. Seuss got canceled. And then they share little snarky memes. So it's very disappointing. I can yell and bitch and moan all day long about the right-wingers and the liars, but it's when they have success. That's just especially irksome. When they have success in the mainstream sharing of ideas, where people are just scanning the headlines and they don't really know what's going on. So then the toxic message is amplified by people who just think they're innocently participating in pop culture, sharing a meme here and there, having a dumb little uninformed opinion. Who's it going to hurt? It just gives me a really bad taste. Speaking of quick headlines that we just glance at, let me just take a couple of glancing blows at a couple headlines. Joe Biden can cancel all student debt if he wants to. He just doesn't want to. When he says he can't do it, he's just wrong. On the Joe Biden meter, he goes up and down and up and down. And recently, for me anyway, more downs than ups. I saw his Secretary of State, Tony Blinken, on the news last night, an extended interview, and it all just sounded so damn familiar. I could have been listening to any Secretary of State from the last 6 administrations. Nothing's changing at all. Remember in the early days of the Orange Menace administration, the first time he dropped a bomb? He dropped a pretty sizable bomb on somewhere in Syria. And everybody in the press, right, left, and center, everybody's saying, oh, okay, well, now he's presidential. He's really the president now. He's dropped a bomb. Good for you. He was universally praised for being tough and being presidential. Well, now Joe's dropped his first bomb, at least the first one we know about, and everybody's just shrugging their shoulders. The oldest story in the book, well, we had to. It was retaliation. We had to show strength. We had to send a message. That little euphemism has really run its course. So Iranian-backed forces attacked U.S. forces, and then so there has to be a proportional response, and they did that. And okay, so oftentimes that little tit-for-tat happens and it's over, but this time, oh, here's another attack just days later in Iraq. Again, Iranian-backed forces. So now Blinken has to talk tough, and well, the date and time of our choosing, we will respond in a proportional. It's just pull out the boilerplate. Nothing's changed. For every great thing you can say about Joe, and there are great things you could find to say, I'm sure. There's at least a couple of stories like this that are so disappointing. As I keep telling the Democrats, get your bench ready. Get your bench players ready to go. You better find a star on your bench and get them ready to go. Get them warmed up. Get them in the bullpen. Get them stretching out here. You're going to have to primary this guy in 24. I know it's a long way off, but really you got to start thinking about it. We just can't be having this. We can't be having this over and over and over. The whole fiasco with the COVID bill, we spent a lot of time talking about it. Was it just yesterday? I forget now. $15 minimum wage. If he wanted it, he'd do it. Kamala Harris takes her orders from you, Joe. You're the boss. She can make $15 minimum wage happen next week in the Senate. It can happen, but it's not a priority for you. You're not making it happen. You're choosing not to do it, just like you're choosing not to forgive student debt. You're choosing not to have Medicare for all. You are slow walking or stopping what we need. I never had any confidence in his climate crisis policies. I was happy that he made it a priority. I was happy that he said the right things, which typically he did during the campaign, during the transition, and during the first month. Yeah, generally he'd say the right things. So I would say, okay, all right, so far so good. But we're starting to see some flesh on the bone here, and there's not much there. You got your centrist, corporate-friendly John Kerry, and you're talking about carbon neutral by 2050? Come on. Yeah, of course we had to stop the bleeding. Yes, of course we had to get the Orange Menace out of there. But this is, we're going nowhere. We're just going nowhere. All right, so there's my quick hit on Joe. And it's not good right now. I got to tell you, it's not good. He and his administration did a pretty decent job getting the vaccine put together. Of course, my big complaint about how the Defense Production Act wasn't used early and often. He used the Defense Production Act, good. He had to play the hand he was dealt by the Orange Menace, and I'll give him credit for that. He got his people in there, and he butted some heads, and he got different entities of Big Pharma to work together and sped up this vaccine to the end of May from previously thought end of July we'd have the numbers. So, okay, good. Yes, obviously better than the Orange Menace. And yes, good things are happening, but not enough. Especially those three areas I mentioned: $15 minimum wage, student loan forgiveness, climate crisis. I have no confidence. I have zero confidence that any of those things are going to happen in a bold enough way and in a timely enough way. And then all of this while we just follow the same old tired playbook on use of the military. And speaking of tired old playbooks, we're a couple weeks out from the historic storm and cold temperatures in Texas and Oklahoma. And to this day, still great numbers of people without water. Some of them still without power. Jackson, Mississippi, I didn't see any updates last night. But the last I heard, the entire damn city still doesn't have running water. I saw in the report, this guy came out with his big buckets to a distribution center where there's dirty water, and he was collecting dirty water. He said, well, this isn't for drinking, obviously. We don't even wash the dishes with it. This is strictly to flush our toilets. In Jackson, Mississippi, USA, a relatively large city in the United States of America, 2 weeks after a cold snap. And this guy's driving his SUV out to a water distribution center to get dirty water to flush his toilets. So I wonder about the people who don't have that kind of transportation, who don't have an SUV, who aren't close enough to a distribution center. I wonder how they're doing. I keep coming back to the same answer. And that is, lefties, go hard. You got a primary every centrist in 22. You got a primary Joe in 24. The American people deserve a choice between the actual real left, bold proposals, progressive solutions, versus the right-wing Christian, radical, white supremacist nationalists, the nut jobs on the other side. You know, we hear a lot about how the middle is being squeezed out because voices on either extreme have been amplified over the years. Well, to that I say good. That's exactly what we need. We need the extreme voices to be heard. We need the middle to be squeezed out, to be kind of imploded from within, because the center doesn't get us anywhere. The center in all of human history has never gotten us anywhere. It's the radicals. It's the innovators. So yes, I say put the left, the real left, against the right, the real right, and let them battle it out and let the voters decide. I have every confidence in the world that voters would make the right decision. It's my firm belief that the right-wing nutjobs would lose their shirts. They would just fall off the cliff like Wile E. Coyote into the canyon, and they'd be gone forever. We would just see the end of it. It would be such a crushing defeat. I can't prove that I'm right until it happens. So make it happen. Prove me wrong. But I think I'm right. A real choice. Give the American voters a real choice between left and right, between progressives and crazy right-wing nationalist Christian weirdos, And that's what the Republican Party is now. We've spent an awful lot of time talking about that. I think I've made my case over the weeks. The result of those elections? The lefties win, the nut jobs fall off the cliff, and now who's remaining? Who's remaining are the progressives versus the few kind of straggler centrists who now occupy this new redefined spectrum. Right? Now that's as far right as anybody wants to go. And you got your Mitt Romneys and you got your Joe Bidens. And they survived. They're still on the playing field. But now they are the extreme right because the spectrum has shifted. Because we have, through the power of the ballot, we have lanced that cancerous appendage. Ted Cruz and Kevin McCarthy and Marjorie Taylor Greene and Rand Paul and all the rest of them are at the bottom of the canyon shaking dust out of their butts with Wile E. Coyote. They're done. What remains standing is a powerful left with a mandate from the voters, the centrists who are now the right, but still on the playing field. Okay, hang around, keep us in check, keep us honest, play that role. But let's get some things done. Let's win and then let's legislate. And boom, boom, boom. Green New Deal, Medicare for all, student loan forgiveness, immigration reform, Black Lives Matter, all of it. I'm not talking about aspirational goals for 2050. I'm talking about 22. I'm talking about 24. I'm talking about getting this done. I'm talking about getting things on track. I'm talking about winning, doing this. Might I remind you, the great Bernie Sanders platform from 2015, free college, student loan forgiveness, $15 minimum. A great many Americans just laughed him off. Well, this is crazy. Free college? By the time the 2018 midterms came along, these were mainstream. And by the time the 2020 election came along, it was just assumed, yes, of course. That's what Americans want. It's certainly what the American left wants, even what the American center wants. All these things poll off the charts. So it's time to make this happen. It's just time to make it happen. And we can't get wrapped up in fear. And I am the first. I raise my hand. I'm guilty of this. Yes, I'm fearful of the radical right. I'm fearful of the crazies. I'm fearful of the Orange Menace coming back, reaching his hand out from the grave like Kerry and recapturing the White House in 2024. Yeah, I confess, that scares me. But I can't be ruled by fear anymore. We can't be ruled by fear. And we can't be ruled by this sort of timid, one step forward, two steps back centrism crap. Any day of the week, any news cycle, any Sunday talk show as you review the week, you're going to find good things to say about Joe. Well, he said the right thing here and he did the right thing there. But when you add it all up, he is taking us nowhere. So get your bench ready, lefties. You people who play the inside game, you know how this works. The Stacey Abrams of the world, you know how to organize. You know how to coordinate. We need you on your game. Starting right now today. Random thought here. I was talking to my daughter yesterday. She lives in California. And it's really sort of dismaying to me because she was raised here in Wisconsin. It was sad to hear what she thinks about Wisconsin because she's been in California for quite some time now. And I spent a lot of time in California, and I can tell you there's a dismissive attitude about really the entire rest of the country, and they especially don't like the Midwest, and they know nothing about Wisconsin, and they really think the very worst of us. And that made me sad in my conversation with my daughter yesterday. I tried to point out that Wisconsin is really very much like all the rest of the country these days. There's this rural-urban divide, and it made me think of an article that I had saved, but it's been hanging around for quite a while. So I went back in my notes to see if I could find it. Let's see, it's from Politico. America's rural crisis triggers calls for Biden to name rural czar. The incoming Biden administration, this was just after inauguration, this article was written by Liz Crampton. The incoming Biden administration is facing growing pressure to appoint a rural envoy within the White House to oversee a national strategy to uplift rural communities facing severe health and economic challenges. Members of Congress and advocates are making the case that the problems plaguing rural regions exacerbated by the pandemic run so deep that a coordinated federal response is critical. A move, they argue, would speed up the nation's economic recovery and boost Biden's popularity among voters in red states. This is a really great idea. We should talk to our representatives about it. We should push this idea. I think it's a great idea. The city mouse, country mouse thing is just getting old, and it's becoming sort of entrenched. Because as it stands now, the right-wing white Christian nationalists just have a complete lock on rural America. We can't have that. So in the light of good policy is good politics, yeah, absolutely. We've got to reach out to rural America. Not to compromise, not to meet them halfway. No, but to really listen, to understand what's going on, to serve the needs. And if the lefties can do that, you'll win. You'll win politically. That's how you bridge divides. By examining the actual needs of real people, treating them with respect, offering real solutions, not compromise, not both-sidism. No, offer your solutions. Make your case. And the first thing we have to do, and I'm talking to myself right now too, we got to try to lose this attitude about how some people are just not worthy of the effort. Again, I was kind of disappointed in the tone of my daughter's voice yesterday when she just kind of sighed. Oh, Wisconsin, you're all so backwards and stupid. I mean, she didn't say those words, but that's what I heard, and it kind of hurt. But, we all do it. I know I do it. Texas, Mississippi, who just recently eliminated all COVID precautions. Yeah, I tend to do a little name calling, if not right out loud in my mind. I disparage entire populations if a state government is making ridiculously stupid decisions. Yeah, it's easy to do. It's really easy to do. But you got to watch it. I got to watch it. I got to be careful. I don't want to just sweep everybody up with the same brush. Can't do that. There are good, smart, progressive lefties working hard in every state in this country. And right alongside them, there are real people with real needs who, so far up to now, have been looking for solutions from the white nationalist Christian crazies. We have to beat them on the political playing field. But the actual people on the ground, citizens, voters, those folks we have to reach, we have to talk to, we have to serve. So, anyway, yeah, it made me think of this article that I'd been saving. I think a rural czar, a real, tangible governmental effort to serve the unique needs of rural regions is a very good idea, very productive thought. There's some governors, there's some members of Congress talking about it. Senator Ron Wyden of Oregon, Kentucky Governor Steve Beshear. I'd love to see some of this go from the idea stage into some implementation. Love to see that. So, yeah, that was on my mind. All right, there it is. I love you. I'm Charles Purcell.